Welcome inside Black and Gold, our big week 3 preview. Saints going to be playing the Philadelphia Eagles. And I know Jalen Hurts been a talk of all week. Everybody worried about the big mobile quarterback, and for good reason. But Steve Geller with Jeff Nowak bring you inside Black and Gold. Just feels like a huge week. Obviously, we're just week 3. And the rage of the NFL has been this Saints offense, which has been pretty weird, honestly. But I think you mentioned that, coming into the show, has there really been any huge news around this team despite this 2-0 start?
None, to the point that it's made preparing for these podcast episodes a lot more difficult. Like usually during the season, this is kind of on autopilot. It's like, what are we going to talk about? Well, this happened. Well, there's the show. What happened? The only thing that's happened is almost, and I say almost, keep in mind, I say almost universally, everyone around the NFL is like, holy heck.
What's going on?
What happened? Why are they suddenly the best offense in the NFL in a year where there's no good offenses in the NFL?
Right.
Look at the points for column in the standings. And it's honestly pretty hilarious when you guys like, oh, that's a reasonable number. Like 47, 51, 42, 45, 91. What? And then you go down to the bottom and it's like, what, 13 or whatever for the Panthers. Yeah, no, it's been something. So this is going to be our rundown segment, which again is normally news driven, but there's just not much news to drive it. So we're also going to hit on, I have a Klint Kubiak clip that I want to play, a KKC, if you will. And also I have a bite that is in the system labeled Nick Wright sucks. And so we will listen to that. And then we will talk about the title, because that's the takeaway.
That might be your biggest, like a biggest click segment if everybody sees that Nick Wright headline.
Yeah. He's if nothing else consistent, and I'll give him credit for that.
Right.
But I do feel like we need a dissenting opinion, because all we hear about is how great the Saints are. And so we have that second segment. Got to sit down with Eliot Shorr-Parks. He's the host of the Go Birds pod. He's been covering the Eagles for like 13 years for WIP Sports Radio out in Philly, and he's just a great resource. Like he knows everything that's going on with this team. Like you talk like, that's the reason I like to go to the individual markets, because like I could talk to a national person about the Eagles and they'll give me all these bullshit talking points that they're actually cribbing from the people who are actually covering the team locally. So you'll have some good insights, and you can usually get a good like weather vane of how things are going by how confident these like local folks are, because they're going to be hinging on everything. And usually he comes in with a lot of confidence. I've talked to him before on this YouTube channel. I think before we had the pod, usually he comes in like feeling like, we got this. And this time it was like, not feeling great.
We just had the color analyst on last night on Sports Talk, Mike Quick, and he was even like to like a bunch of Bobby's questions saying, so you think we got a chance? Or you're saying we got a chance?
Right. Yeah, the mood has changed in Philly dramatically.
Oh yeah,
since 10-1 last year. Let's put it that way. So we'll have that in the second segment. Third segment, X factors as always: offense, defense. Pick some elements of this game that we think will swing it. So check out that in the third segment. But let's get into some news. Okay, so keep in mind we're recording this Friday morning. So as always, we don't know what's going to come out on the final injury report. I think we have a pretty good idea of what it all is going to look like in terms of, hey, these guys are going to be questionable. These guys are, have a chance to play. These guys probably aren't. Colin Saunders was kind of a weird situation. He was at practice early on Thursday, then left, and then was listed as a DMP on the participation report. So that's not a great sign, because it kind of sounds like, hey, I'm going to give it a go, and then clearly it wasn't working for him. So he's dealing with that calf issue. Sounds like he's probably a little ways off. We'll have to see. The good news, Taysom Hill back to practice. And here's the thing. When you send a guy out of the game and put him in, I don't know, a car, an ambulance, I don't even know how they get from the stadium to the hospital. But when you deem that an injury is significant enough to need further evaluation immediately, you are concerned that there's something significant there, and you say chest. So you're thinking ribs, you're thinking lung, right? Like, remember when Drew Brees played with that collapsed lung? Like, that's something that happens. You're thinking maybe a pec a pec injury. If he's back at practice on Thursday, that means that they feel like he avoided anything significant. So that's a really good sign. I don't know if he's going to play, but in the sense of when you hear someone leaves a game and goes to the hospital, you're thinking potentially season ending. So they clearly dodged a bullet there.
And that's another shout out to Dennis Allen. He was really forthright with that on Wednesday. Said, fully expect him to be back limited tomorrow.
And I always get nervous. I get nervous when he says stuff like that because he's just setting himself up. Like coaches shouldn't say stuff like that.
Right, I hear you, right? Because then it comes back and bites you in the ass, as it did many times with the Zion Williamson saga with the Pelicans.
Or Michael Thomas, right? Michael Thomas in 2022. Like, that was a weird situation. And then again, the next year, it was like, oh, we think he might be, and then he's not, So it's just like, you're almost better off saying, we'll see what happens. Like, for whatever reason, he decided to be confident about that. And hey, it paid off for him. So now we can say he was forthright. But it's just, coaches, they're better off not giving out injury information. Like, it was something that was kind of annoying about Sean Payton for that whole time. But then when you kind of see it and you're like, I get it. I understand why coaches don't want to put themselves in that situation. But either way, that's good news. Less good news, Will Harris appeared on the injury report on Thursday dealing with a shin issue. He was a DNP.
On the positive note, too, Marshawn was back.
Yes, Marshawn was back, but we talked about that in the Wednesday episode. He was back on Wednesday. So, yeah, he was limited again on Thursday. It would have been nice to see him upgraded, but either way, I'm sure he's going to be questionable. They're going to have all these guys questionable, right?
Exactly. That's like just questionable on there, based another game time decision for the black and gold.
Yeah, Will Harris is the one that, when you get added to the injury report on Thursday, anytime you get downgraded midweek, that's a bad sign. He's a veteran player. So, last week we talked about, hey, will they feel comfortable playing Taliesin Fuaga without practice time? They did. And that's impressive to me in large part because like the scheme that they were running from a protection perspective was very, very intensive. And like it was a very complex plan, and they still felt comfortable throwing him out there. I think that's a good indicator of how smart this guy is, that he's able to pick all that up in one day of practice. But Will Harris, if he can't go, Jordan Howden would fill in there, and you would probably elevate Jonathan Abram from the practice squad. You elevated Ugo Amadi last week, but I think he's more of your slot corner guy than anything else. And you had to move Kool-Aid outside last week, so I think that's why you called up Amadi. I think this week it would be Abram if you're worried that Will Harris can't go. One other injury note, and it's on the other side of the equation. We already talked about A.J. Brown. Does not look like he's going to go. Looks like he told Lisa Salters the truth, and I'm sure his coaches are not happy about that.
Right.
Because they didn't want the Saints to know on Monday that A.J. Brown probably wasn't going to play. They would wanted to force them to have to think about it until at least
just
Wednesday.
Thrown out there multiple weeks.
Yeah. No, and like I guarantee you he got reamed the fuck out by his coaches when they heard about that. Because like think about it, like there's only so many ways you can gain an advantage in the NFL. And it's not going to be an advantage to not have your star player, but at the very least, you'd like to maintain that air of they have to prepare for him. The Saints from Monday evening on have done nothing but prepare for everybody else. Right? So I don't know. I think that's like I'm sure he got reamed out. But the other guy who appeared on Thursday in the first actual day of practice, CJ Gardner-Johnson with a foot issue, is a DNP. If he can't go,
oh man,
that'll be the third time the Saints have been able to dodge the bullet that is CJ Gardner-Johnson showing up. Like, you think he's annoying, a pest, like against any other team? Oh my God. He would know, like, he's going to show up knowing how to push buttons of certain people. Thankfully, the entire offense is different, so he doesn't have anything on them. But, like, maybe Alvin. Alvin's the only guy, but I don't think it's possible to get under Alvin's skin. I genuinely don't. Maybe Eric McCoy. I don't know. But,
yeah, I was thinking, too, like, what would Shaheed or Olave do in this situation? I don't see either one like lashing out at Chauncey.
Rashid will just kind of be like, cool, dude. I could see Chris getting a little hot under the collar. He's just because it's nothing negative about Chris, but like you kind of see his personality in the locker room is very like dialed down, but you get him on the field and he's a fiery guy. Like he'll get fired up to the point that he'll make some kind of dumb mistakes. Remember against Carolina, he spiked the ball, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's a live ball. So like he I think again, this isn't a negative thing. I just think he's on the field. He's that kind of fired up, hyped up guy, whereas Rashid is very even keeled. Like there's nothing CJ could say to Rashid to get him going. I don't know.
But I just don't see like Olave, punching the dude.
If anyone punches somebody, I'm going to pick right now and say it would probably be Cedric Wilson. Like, I don't know why. I just get the vibe like he, because he's just going to be out there blocking a lot, right? Like they're going to be getting into it. And then CJ will like chain snatch his mouth guard like he likes to do. And then like I like that's the only guy I could see like actually throwing a punch.
My money would be on Penning.
Yeah, but they're not going to be engaging, right?
I'm just saying if I got a guy throwing a punch, it's definitely Trevor.
I see. I just don't know how they would like. At what point would they even be like close enough to each other for that to happen, right? Plus, like I think. I don't know. Like, I think Trevor would find a way to just hurt him in the field of play rather than, but we'll see. But either way, he's hurt. If he can't go, that would be a bummer for him, I think, because this matchup is one he wants to get in on. And he wanted that to be the case in 2022. I wanted to get after the Andy Dalton Saints. That wanted to be the case in 2023. Well, for the Lions game, and he wasn't able to play in that one either. So we'll have to see. But
the last times Gardner Johnson talked to us, he flat out in the locker room, he was telling everybody, I'm the best slot corner in the NFL.
Well, he doesn't even play slot corner anymore. That's kind of the interesting thing. But all right. So a couple other things. One, I talked about a lot about this earlier, and like, we're not going to play you a lot of Klint Kubiak clips. And there's good reason for that, because they're not playable. And that's not, again, like saying like, hey, this might sound negative. I'm not being negative. This is just the reality of Klint Kubiak. And here's a good example of that.
Kind of a non-football question, but how would you describe you?
Ball coach for the Saints. I'm not giving you much there. Say that, I'm a Christian, I'm a dad, and then somewhere way down the line, a football coach.
I think Derek said, you just all ball all the time. I mean, what do you do to unwind? Would you have a hobby if there is?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometime after the season, figure that out.
Would you have a hobby? I don't. Yeah, definitely. Just I don't know what it is right now.
Hasn't found it yet. I just know football.
But no, all ball. Like that is definitely the case. And this is what I said on Wednesday. It's like, when that's happening, when you have a guy that's all ball, that's good when things are going well. When things aren't going well, it gets a little frustrating because you want some levity, some like level of like, hey, it's at least let's have a good time while this is terrible. That's not the case.
You already know, like, even if things do go sour, Clint's not going to give you anything.
No. And again, it's not the end of the world by any stretch.
I just see the wheels turning a lot upstairs. So
as long as that, being all ball is great as long as you see the product of that on the field. And we absolutely have. Now, one thing we talked about, we haven't probably talked about enough, is just how much the Saints were able to neutralize Micah Parsons in that matchup. And to me, that the fascinating thing is you went in saying, hey, how are the Saints going to neutralize Micah Parsons? How are the Saints tackles going to hold up against a guy like Micah Parsons? And the fascinating thing is the answer to that question, or at least a large part of the answer to that question, was they aren't. We're going to have other people handle it. Like the number of reps you saw in that game where the Saints dropped back to pass, and they didn't drop back that often. That was a part of it too. They didn't give Micah that many opportunities to rush the passer. But even when he did have those opportunities, he's not even getting blocked by a tackle a lot of the time, right? And Micah talked about this after the game. He's like, he's never seen an approach even anything like it. And you got to give credit to guys like Foster Moreau, who blocked his ass off, Alvin Kamara, who actually got left one-on-one with Micah a couple times, Jamal Williams, Adam Prentice, Juwan Johnson. And I'll just show you a couple quick clips here to illustrate that. Like, these are clips where Micah Parsons is coming off the edge and the tackle on that side is just bypassing him and blocking the inside guy and saying, okay, these guys coming in motion are going to handle it. Here's the first one. You can see it's actually Juwan on that side, and then I think Foster's going to come over and help, and you're going to have Fuaga just take the inside guy, and Micah just has no idea what to do with it. Just watch. So here's Foster coming in motion. All right, get out of the way. We're going to have a completion over the middle to Chris Olave, and we're going to go from there. Like, this is not how Micah Parsons is used to playing football. And it's kind of fascinating, and I think the Saints have kind of unlocked something here in terms of, I think they've kind of shown you the book on how you need to attack Micah Parsons with your protection plans. If you can take a couple tight ends and just say, hey, you handle him, it seems like that's a satisfactory way to do it. And it didn't work every time. There was one play that Carr had to dirt the ball because I think it was Adam Prentice missed on a block, but that wasn't a one-off. Like, they did it again here. And this time it's Penning off to the right side. Instead of asking Trevor to hold up one-on-one with Micah, they have Juwan take it, and then they send Jamal Williams from the backfield and have him pick it up. Let's watch what happens. So you see Juwan comes in motion, sets up over there. So you're already changing the look on him. And then Jamal kind of cuts him. Now, that's a dangerous block there because if Juwan doesn't get beat and he cuts him, it's a chop block. But either way, like, you see, like, you're changing the look up on him. And so whatever rush, when you're standing there as a defensive end and you're like, okay, I'm going to get one-on-one here. I'm going to do this. Let's see what he does. Like, if you're trying to set up a move, for example, one of the ways that Trevor's been getting beat throughout his career is this guy's setting up, okay, power move, okay, inside, right? Or outside, then inside. So if you're sitting there feeling like, hey, this is a big down and I want to get to the quarterback, I've been setting up this inside move on Trevor Penning. Right. And so you're getting there geared up to kind of pull off that inside move. And then all of a sudden, Juwan Johnson's standing in front of you. And then you get by him and Jamal Williams is cutting you down. Like, that has nothing to do with the left tackle, the right tackle. It's all about the protection plan, the protection scheme. And I think the Saints, if I'm other teams looking at how am I going to survive Micah Parsons, I don't need an end to block him. That's probably the Achilles heel of a guy like Micah, of these smaller rushes. They're fast. They can get around. They can pull off moves on your ends that you might not be able to handle a lot of the time, but you can block them with a tight end because they're not big enough to just run through them. Now, DeMarcus Lawrence, probably a different story. A Myles Garrett, a Nick Bosa, probably a different story, but that's, one of the products of these defensive ends shrinking down to basically being big linebackers is you should be able to block them with smaller, more athletic guys. And I thought the Saints handled that really well. So we'll see how that goes. But to me, that was my biggest takeaway is, the other important thing is if you're going to devote all those skill players to blocking, you better have two wide receivers who can get off coverage because there's not going to be many options downfield. So you got to have guys who will win. You need a stud wide receiver or two. But either way, like, I don't expect that to be the plan every week. I think that was kind of very specific to Dallas. But it's nice to know you have that club in the bag, right?
Yeah, and to me, obviously the talk's been the offense, the numbers you're putting up, and obviously that all comes back with the offensive line too. To me, everyone's worried about losing Klint Kubiak after 1 year. What about the offensive line staff has done incredible work?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think John Benton's going to go get offense coordinator jobs. But no, I give him a lot of credit. Rick Dennison is another example of, like, these guys aren't exactly guys you're going to lose to other opportunities. But, I mean, what would probably happen is, if Klint ends up getting a head coaching job, does he take these guys with him? Right? Can he probably, I would guess he would, because they're, and we'll see, like a guy like maybe Janoko, you'd be like, hey, you can be the offensive coordinator now, and maybe, stuff like that. But we'll see. That's a bridge we'll cross when it's built.
It's just been real impressive, obviously, because there's a lot of the same dudes, obviously, from last year. That you have the rookie in Fuaga and the addition of Lucas Patrick, but to see at least
has played great, by the way.
Right, but just to see the development, a true succession going on with Trevor Penning's development, has been a huge positive for me, I think.
Yeah, and they've done a good job of making sure he's in positions to succeed, and I think that's offensive linemen way too often get put in bad situations and then they struggle, and you're like, well, this guy sucks. I'm like, well, I mean, is he that bad, or are we just setting him up to fail? And I think that's the difference, is when you can have a good plan around a guy, you can have a lot more success, and he can build confidence. And then when you put him in that bad situation and he's confident, maybe he can go out there and win. The issue with Trevor has been, you watch him go out there and it's like he's playing looking like he already lost. So that's the big thing. But anyway, let's change tact one more time. Coming into here, I said, almost everybody is being positive about the Saints. Well, there's one guy that we can trust. You know, if you ever need the Saints, if you're worried the Saints can get too high on themselves, just have Nick Wright playing on a loop in the locker room, and you'll come back down to earth and you'll play like everyone's being mean to you again. And so here is the clip titled "Nick Wright Sucks."
Whatever you're talking about, why these other teams are above the Saints, and you don't like Carr, and you don't like the Saints,
can I tell you?
And they're never going to get invited to one of your parties. I get it. So that's where they stay.
So a couple things. One is, do I still have seared in my memory Derek Carr in the one playoff game he ever played in on fourth down with the chance to beat the Cincinnati Bengals, deciding, I'll just throw short of the end zone for no reason? Yeah, of course I do. Do I have seared in my memory the 2 other times in his career he has had a 5-game stretch similar to the one he's on, the heater he's on right now dating back to last season, only to immediately go back to being Derek Carr? Yeah, I do. But my big issue with the Saints is actually not Derek Carr related. If I have a single issue with the Saints, it's that I think they have, if we were ranking head coaches in the NFL, sorry, coach, but Dennis Allen, there's not a single coach team above them on the tiers that I think has a bigger question at head coach. They also are an incredibly old roster, and I just think it's fluky. I know though, and by the way, I think most people agree with me. I think there's this weird like conscience where people are like, well, I don't really believe in them, but I think they deserve us to pretend we do. You know what? Yeah. That's why you need the committee. That's emotionless. Right. They deserve it. Yeah. Like it's kids kickball. And it's like everybody's got to get a turn. It's the NFL. It's the committee's tiers. We're not going to be fooled by your guys' pedantic emotions.
His party,
yeah, well, you know what? Maybe the committee will be proven wrong.
What they
we'll see.
I don't want to go to a Nick Wright party.
I'm not missing out on that invitation. So, to be fair, he doesn't have them toward the bottom of the NFL anymore. He has them in the middle, where it's kind of like the Vikings and the Seahawks and the Steelers, which I think that's a fair group because those are 4 of the best teams in the NFL right now in terms of, okay, they're all 2-0. Now the teams above them, you have the Bears. What? You have the Bengals and the Ravens, both 0-2. You have the Falcons, 1-1. So the part of that clip that I'm just like, you're so full of shit. It's emotionless. What the fuck are you talking about? If this was emotionless, to have it be emotionless, you would have to be going off of facts and data, and all the facts and data support the Saints right now because they've been flat out dominating. So the only way for you to tell me, like, I'm going to ignore all of that and still say I don't believe in this team is for it to be an emotional take. So, like, you can't sit there and emotionally tell me, I know that everything looks perfect, but I hate it anyway, and then be like, but this is unemotional. Like, you're such an asshole.
That's, I guess, the nice thing of it is that we're getting a laugh off it. He gets to be the heel for New Orleans.
Yeah, be the heel. That's fine. That's your thing. I give him credit. He's sticking to his takes. He's sticking to his guns. And that's Eric Mangini trying to walk him back off the ledge, being like, guy, I think this is going to age poorly for you. Like, he's trying to save Nick Wright from himself. That's what that is Eric being like, they're going to save these clips and play them back in a couple weeks. And you're not going to like how they sound when this offense doesn't, like, it's like this idea that, hey, we're just being nice to the Saints because they deserve it. No, we're being nice to the Saints because they've scored 91 points through 2 weeks, and all of these issues that you were pointing out in the preseason don't seem to exist. Like, Derek Carr, he's had these stretches before. Like, sure, but all quarterbacks have high stretches and low stretches. Like, what's your point?
I think he's just mad he didn't get like a high heel or a purse at a parade he went to.
That's my thing. That's my idea with Florio. I think Florio got hit in the eye with a bag of beads or something, and he's just been mad ever since. Because, like, it's so funny, and it's like, you'd be mad about Dennis Allen, but the thing is, like, your idea, like, you're mad about Derek Carr and you're mad about Dennis Allen as if those are two things, but, like, one guy is the defensive coordinator and the other guy is the quarterback. So if the offense is humming and the defense is humming, those guys are disconnected, really. And Dennis Allen being a bad coach, which I don't know, is he a bad coach? But from the, like, you look at the circumstances around him taking over this team and the results, which is 18-18, and you feel pretty good about where that might go this year. I mean, is that a bad head coach? I feel like taking over a team, like, look at what happened to the Patriots when Tom Brady left, right? reinvigorating a team and kind of rebuilding that structure after a Hall of Fame coach or Hall of Fame quarterback disappears, and your worst case scenario being 7-10, is that a bad coaching job? I don't know.
It's just like you mentioned with the national media compared to local. This is just another typical guy just getting his bullet points, and I'm going to jump on the quarterback and the coach.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't really care. Again, he has him in the middle. He doesn't have him at the bottom. But if you were wondering who was going to be the longest to hold out, and I do agree with him in the fact that, like, so many folks have done an about face so fast and are pretending that, like, you weren't talking shit like 14 days ago. So
now, like, they're like in the top 5 of power rankings.
Exactly.
You're like, whoa.
Like folks that were just being relentlessly negative, like Stephen A. Smith, right? Now he's like, the Saints are the best team in the world. And it's like, I agree that seems a little disingenuous of, like, I'm not even going to admit that I was completely wrong. I'm just going to completely change where my feet were and pretend that I was within stepping distance all the time. And in reality, no, you had to get on a helicopter and go over a giant ravine to get to where you are now. And you're pretending that never happened, that ride you took just didn't exist. And you were always reasonably close to this point, and you were not. So in his defense, I believe in that part, is everyone's jumping on the bandwagon now and pretending that they were close enough to jump on it all along.
Still not going to that Nick Wright party.
No. I still think he's. And again, the title of that segment was Nick Wright sucks, or at least my title for that segment was Nick Wright sucks. And my analysis kind of boils down to too long didn't read. Nick Wright sucks. So there you have it.
I look forward to hearing more of his takes throughout the season.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. I just hope they come out and blow up the Eagles so we can hear.
Because it is like when you start hearing all the positive, chatter, the noise going on, having this thrown in does make it entertaining.
I prefer when people are mean. I do. it gives me more to talk about. Like, I don't have as much fun hearing how great everything is. But all right, let's wrap up that segment. Again, this is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. We'll be coming back, or I'll be coming back. We're giving Steve this segment off. He's going to go putter around his house, do whatever he does when he's off camera. And I'm going to sit down with Eliot Shorr-Parks of the Go Birds pod to break down what's going on with the Eagles, what are our expectations for this matchup on Sunday, why he feels a lot less confident than he did like maybe 12 months ago. And we're going to get into a lot of it. But who dat? Stick around. We will be right back. And we're back here on Inside Black and Gold, getting ready for Eagles at Saints in week 3, giving Steve Geller this segment off because we're going to bring in Eliot Shorr-Parks, co-host Birds Pod, and the Eagles beat reporter for 94 WIP Sports Radio in Philly. But an interesting first 2 weeks in Eagles land. How you feeling? How you doing today? Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's a good game. I think, in a week 3 games, there's not a ton of good matchups. This is certainly one of the best. So excited to talk about it.
Yeah, this is such 2 weeks ago, I wasn't sure what to make of this game, right?
Right.
And I feel like it's kind of gone, at least from the Saints side of things, about as backwards as it could have in terms of probably the expectation of where the Saints were expecting to be at this point versus where they are. And then kind of in Eagles land, it's like, I have to imagine it's been kind of this topsy-turvy idea of like, hey, the start of last year was great. The end of last year was terrible. The start of this year, I don't know, was a pretty strong start. And then the end of week 2, which, thankfully it was nice. I got to watch both of the Saints' next upcoming opponents in one game. That helped me out. But, how is that vibe going? It has to feel like there's an idea that, hey, this could go really badly if things don't turn around soon. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think fans probably still think about last year. If you think about the collapse at the end of last season, I think they lost 7 of their last 8 or 6 of their last 7, kind of blocked it out, the number. But if you look at the end of last year and then you go into this year starting 1-1, being 1-1 is, at its surface, is nothing to worry about. They probably outplayed the Falcons. They should have won the game. They blew it at the end, and that's on them. But when you look at the overall track record over these past 10 games of what Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts have been, that's where I think the fans get worried. Now, the good news is the Eagles also have a long track record of winning with them. Prior to this stretch, they had won some absurd amount of games, like 22 out of 28. They almost won the Super Bowl, really, really close to winning that Super Bowl. So I think with a lot of Eagles fans, it's what team is this Eagles team? Is it the team that we saw for almost 2 years under Nick and Jalen, or is it the team that we've seen over the last 10 games? So I think there's definitely some worry about, needing to get this thing back on track.
Yeah, and that is the strange thing is it's like I think a lot of people would say, hey, Nick Sirianni, he feels like he's on the hot seat. But then you look at the overall record and the number of games that they've won, this group has won, and it's right there at the top of the NFL. But one of the big changes, obviously, they brought in Kellen Moore, some tweaks on offense. Just curious, from what we've seen the last few years, is there any kind of tangible difference in how this year's team is operating?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is how they've done against the blitz. In terms of, post-snap offense, how they look, nothing that different to me, at least, to my eyes watching these first 2 weeks. But where they've been much better is against the blitz. Last year, they were one of the worst teams in the league against the blitz. Teams just blitzed them into oblivion towards the end of the season. They had no answer for it. Jalen couldn't handle it. The offense couldn't handle it. In these first 2 weeks, they've been one of the best teams in the league against the blitz. So coming into the year, the big concern would be, our team's just going to blitz Jalen. They'll have no answer, and the offense will struggle. The offense has struggled in some ways, but it's not been because of the blitz. Jalen now has full control pre-snap on what he's doing. They have different answers built into the offense than they did last year. So that would be the biggest addition or positive I think Kellen has brought to the team as offensive coordinator. Obviously, he's the play caller, so there's some differences, but just their ability to stop the blitz and to not get, just boat raced by it has been huge.
Yeah, and obviously another big addition is Saquon Barkley. I have a soft spot for Saquon growing up, as a Giants fan.
Okay.
It did feel like, obviously there's probably some negativity around that drop at the end of that game.
Yeah,
I think it was the right call. I think you go for the first down there. I don't think you run it and try to make 40 seconds. But, one thing Dennis Allen was talking about Saquon this week, and I thought how he phrases was correct. And it's like, he says Saquon's speed and explosiveness and the way he hits the hole downhill. It's like you watch on tape. Sometimes he just comes out of nowhere, and then the next thing you know, he's like 7 yards down the field.
Yeah.
And I do think that's something that he brings to the game that not a lot of players bring. Like you saw Bijan Robinson versus Saquon Barkley. I think those two are very similar players in that, like, there's not that many true home run threats from the running back position in today's NFL. Have a lot of really good running backs. I wouldn't even call Alvin Kamara a true home run threat, even though he can score from pretty far out. Saquon is just one of those guys that you can bottle him up all game, and he gets one crease. And this, you watched him play so many times, and he scored a lot of long touchdowns against the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
What has he added to that offense over the first 2 weeks from what you saw? Obviously, a really strong week one. And that drop in week two.
I think you hit it on the head. Like, he is a guy that on any play can score a touchdown. What's been surprising to me, and I did watch him a few times when the Giants played the Eagles, obviously twice a year, but he missed some of those games. He was injured. The Giants had a bad offensive line. I think what you're seeing in Philadelphia is with this offensive line and how well they played the first 2 weeks, the holes he's getting to work with are way bigger than he ever had in New York. So I think he's had a chance to really show that speed. And I have always thought of Saquon as more of a power back, obviously huge muscles, like all those things. When he takes off, he can really go, man. Like he covers distance in a hurry. So yeah, there's been a few times already in the first 2 weeks where he gets in that open field and he's good to go. So yeah, he is a home run threat for sure. He's been awesome the first 2 weeks. He's making guys miss. They're giving it to him a bunch. So he's been everything the Eagles could have hoped for.
All right, now shifting to the other side of the ball, and it's finally happening. We've been waiting for this for several years. It's been scheduled like 2 or 3 times before, but it never actually happened. And that's the CJ Gardner-Johnson, there will be blood revenge for coming into New Orleans. Because I think it was 2022. The Saints played the Eagles, and that was the one they played up. I think it was like week 16. He was hurt for that game. He was on the Lions last year. They came to town. He was hurt for that game. It's finally happening, and I'm just fascinated. I know he got punched the other day. I think by my count, that's number 4 punches in games.
Lead the league. Yeah, it has to lead the league.
And that doesn't even include when he got cold cocked in practice by Michael Thomas. And Mike Thomas got suspended. So I have to imagine there's conversations going on in the Saints locker room, like the coaches who know CJ are like, guys, for y'all folks who didn't play with CJ, go talk to some of the folks who did play with CJ and get ready. because he does that. Like his move is to grab, is like chain snatch your mouth guard, which that would piss me off too. So I get why that's annoying. But you've seen him twice now, because he obviously ended up there when he got traded, then left, went to the Lions. Now he's back. He's an instigator, but he's also, just an energy guy, right? Like that fourth down stop, even though he definitely took his helmet off, was a great hit. And he'll have those moments where he kind of, you're like, well, what was that? And then he'll come up with those big moments. What have you seen from him, first of all? What are your expectations for this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, Chauncey, I think, is, kind of exactly who he was in 2022. He's probably exactly who how I'll describe him to you. Like, he's a guy that can make really big plays. He has good instincts at times to go create turnovers. He had a really big stop against the Falcons last week on fourth down that many people thought kind of ended the game until it all kind of collapsed and fell apart. But the other thing with Chauncey is, he does miss tackles sometimes. He missed a tackle last week that led to a touchdown. He missed a tackle in week 1 that led to a touchdown. I think he's going to be super fired up for this game. He's certainly a player that plays with emotion. You love to see that from players. It'll be great theater. We'll see how the Saints decide to attack him, because they know him well. And we'll see if he can, keep his emotions in check. But I think we're living in a world where Chauncey's either going to go down to New Orleans and have 2 interceptions, make big plays, and just make the Saints pay, or the emotions get the better of him and the Saints are able to take advantage of him. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup for sure.
He's been playing more free safety, right? He's not
He
kind
moves
of the dedicated
around.
slot.
Yeah. He's definitely not. No, he's definitely not taking any nickel snaps. He's been a safety for sure. They do put him in the box, but yeah, he's been a safety.
Yeah, that's been the interesting change, and I think that's part of the reason he ended up leaving, is because he was a dedicated slot corner here.
Yep.
And I think there was like, hey, we're not going to pay top dollar for a slot corner, and then he was like, okay, fine, I'll go somewhere else. I'll play safety. Yeah. The other guy who really never got a lot of run here, but is getting a lot of run at the expense of probably Devin White, right? Who doesn't seem particularly thrilled with this situation, but is Zach Bond. I think he's leading the team in tackles. I know he had a ton in week 1, and he had like 8 or something in week 2. What is his role in that defense? And, what have you seen from him in 2 weeks?
Yeah, so he had an awesome week 1. I think he had 15 tackles.
Right.
He was all over the place. He had 2 sacks, I think. But week 2, not so much. He didn't have a great game in week 2. And I think that's probably to be somewhat expected. This is, and you could probably tell me more about this, but like, he didn't play much stand-up linebacker in New Orleans. He was, from what I understand, mostly an edge rusher. Yeah. So to get 2 weeks in a row of playing 90+ snaps in a new position, there's going to be some struggles. But athletically, he's the best linebacker they have. He's long. He covers a lot of ground. He can get after the quarterback if you need. So I think it's been, an up and down first 2 weeks for him. Again, I'm sure the Saints know him well. They'll know how to attack him. But I think the Eagles are encouraged by what they've seen from him so far in his new position.
Yeah. What do you think of Vic Fangio's kind of scheme? How do you think that's gone?
So I think that now the issue is the Eagles' defensive line has not been good the first 2 weeks. They've not played well. The good news is the Saints' offensive line's not that good. So that you would think that in this matchup, the Eagles would be able to potentially get some pressure. But the scheme itself from Vic is kind of what you expected. Like, he doesn't really blitz. He drops the 2 safeties back. Like, there's nothing really that creative with what Vic does.
Yeah, it's funny. I would have agreed with you a couple weeks ago that the Saints' offensive line is the weak spot. Through 2 weeks, we haven't seen that. Yeah. I keep kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop, because we do know that it's like, hey, you got a rookie left tackle, you got Trevor Penning at right tackle, but then you go and play the Cowboys and you don't even hear from Micah Parsons at all. Yeah. I think it's a lot more about scheme than anything else. So I'm interested to see how the offensive line handles it. But, this game is funny, and I'm curious, to hear, okay, how many Eagles fans traveled? They were in Atlanta last week. I'm not making that up.
No, it was in Philadelphia.
It was in Philadelphia. Where were they week 1?
Week 1, they were in Brazil.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
okay.
A bit of a trip. Yeah.
It's tough to know. And I do wonder, so you look at the tickets for this game 2 weeks ago, you could have probably got these tickets for like $50. Now the cheapest ticket to get in the building is $130. And the energy around this team is different. I'm curious to see on Sunday how that crowd is dispersed, because I have an inkling of an idea that maybe Eagles fans were looking at this matchup a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, and being like, hey, why not take a trip to New Orleans? This will be an easy walkover win. and who knows now, they've probably got a good deal on those tickets. Do you expect Eagles fans to be traveling well at this point in the season? And kind of what's the energy like in the fan base right now around this team?
So, I mean, I think fans are definitely disappointed about the loss, but the good news is I don't think many fans are booking their road trips 2 days in advance. So a lot of fans have been planning to go to this trip already. I know there's going to be a lot of Eagles fans down there. I will say I've been covering the team for like 12 years. I've been to every stadium in the league. Like the Saints Stadium is one of the hardest to play in. So, well, I think the Eagles fans will show up and I think that they will make noise. Yeah, I mean the Saints Stadium is unbelievable. Like it is loud. Fans are really into it. So I expect Eagles fans to travel really really well. But the Saints Stadium is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's going to look a lot different than the last time you were there. They basically, because the Super Bowl's coming in, they renovated the whole thing.
Oh, excited to see it. Very nice.
Press box food. You're going to be impressed. It's better than it used to be. I would have ranked it like 32nd in the league.
Yeah, I remember the press box not being that nice. So I'm excited to see the new.
Yeah, I haven't been to the link yet. I've been to, I started working on the sidelines last year, so I'm knocking them down.
Yeah,
I haven't been to the link yet. But I was looking through the Eagles Saints history, and it's such a weird, every team has kind of their own kind of checkered past against specific teams, but the Eagles and Saints just seems kind of remarkable in the sense of like 2020, it was Taysom Hill. 2021, it was Trevor Siemian. 2022, it was Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
Now you get Derek Carr, and I'm curious. I like to ask other folks like in other fan bases, what has been your impression of the Saints start? Because you look at the power rankings at the beginning of the season, the Saints are at 27, 28.
Yep.
Now a lot of folks have them up in the top 10. Seems like everyone, but maybe like Nick Wright is being positive about this team. Nick will stay on his takes until he dies.
Nick doesn't like the Eagles either, so I think this is one thing both pods audiences.
He picks his winners and he does not deviate. And I give him credit for that. I do. Consistency is key. But what has been your perception of what you've seen from the Saints over these first 2 weeks?
So I think that there's a couple ways to look at this game and this team. If the Eagles are playing the Saints in Week 8, I would look and go, they're likely frauds. Like the lines aren't that good. Dennis Allen, I don't think is a great head coach. I think the receivers are pretty good, but outside of Chris Olave, there's really, I don't think like that number one type receiver. Alvin Kamara is a great player for sure, but he's been a great player for a few years. Dennis Allen is 18-18 since he's been there. Derek Carr, like definition of average. I think he makes some throws that are impressive, and he'll also make some throws that make you understand why he's not like a top 10 guy. So if this was Week 8, I think I would probably be like, whatever, who cares about the Saints? The tough thing is they are playing great right now. And I do think the new coordinator helps. And I do think, to your point, like while the offensive line has holes, they've been awesome the first 2 weeks. So I think the Saints are going to be a playoff team. I don't think they're going to completely collapse, but I would be surprised if they were a 13-win team where they're scoring 30 plus points or 28 plus points for the rest of the season. I think they're going to come back down to earth. But right now it's a tough matchup.
Yeah, the way Dennis Allen put it, I appreciate it. It's like when things are going well, it feels like, you can do nothing wrong. And when things are going badly, it feels like everything is terrible all the time. And it's 100%. Like you kind of got to stay in the middle there. Mm-hmm. One other question before I let you go. So I'm sure Eagles coaches were not thrilled when, was it Susie Colbert on Monday Night Football was like, AJ Brown told me he's going to be out 2 weeks. These coaches don't want, coaches want to keep that as a secret until the last possible second. And getting that out there on Monday Night Football obviously was probably not a thrill for coaches. But how does that affect that offense? How does that change what they want to do with some of these other guys?
It's a massive loss. A.J. Brown's the best player on the team. He's the most important player on the team. If you look at this offense with A.J. Brown and this offense without A.J. Brown, they are two different offenses. They struggle to score when A.J.'s not there. So it's a huge loss. Like Devontae Smith is an awesome player. I think he's a great wide receiver. But the depth chart really takes a hit after that. There's Paris Campbell, Johnny Wilson, who's a rookie, Britton Covey, who's a third-year player that's still kind of like getting into the receiver game. He's more of a punt returner at this point. So, they very, very much miss AJ when he doesn't play. If AJ was playing, I think this is maybe a different game. But with no AJ, it's definitely tough.
Do you funnel more targets to Devontae Smith, or is there another player that you think kind of picks up those targets?
So they'll try, but obviously teams key in on Devontae because now he's only receiver to worry about. But I think that also, like, you look at Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert is someone that is one of the best receiving tight ends in the league. Probably doesn't get the touches he should get, considering how good he is. Didn't even get a ton of touches last week or targets with AJ out. But Dallas Goedert's the one that they should key in on, or that the Eagles should focus on more with AJ out.
Gotcha. And one more quick one. Cam Jurgens, tush push. What are your
Yes.
thoughts? You think it's working? Think it's working for him?
Yeah, I mean, look, like it's just a quarterback sneak. It just is what it is. Like we can call it a tush push, and there is a difference to it, but it's basically a quarterback sneak. Now, what I do think this year is proving is it isn't some like magic play that like no one can run, and it's unfair to the league. The Eagles are really good at running it because of the personnel they had last year. This year, early on, not as much, but yeah, I mean, it's basically just a quarterback sneak. So he's been fine with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what people forget is like a big part of this is Jalen Hurts' quads. Right?
Yes. Well, it helps when you have a quarterback that can squat 600 pounds for sure.
Exactly. But all right, Eliot Shorr-Parks, host of Go Birds Pod, also been the Eagles beat reporter for WIP
There you go.
Sports Radio in Philly. I've been having this problem over the last couple of days where I just can't talk. And it, in my line of work,
yes, I go through that as well. It definitely makes it tough to do the job.
Just got to kind of swallow some words and move on. But all right, Eagles, Saints on Sunday. Eagles 1-1, Saints 2-0. Going to be a lot of fun. Thanks, Eliot, for the time, and hope to see you out there on Sunday.
Sounds good. Talk to you later, man.
All right. Thanks again to Eliot for coming on. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup. I feel like Eagles fans right now are, and you kind of heard it there, and I was listening to Eliot's podcast before he came on. And, there's anytime you lose the way they did on Monday night with Kirk Cousins leading that last second drive, Jalen Hurts having an opportunity to go lead them for a field goal and not getting it done, there's going to be exasperation to say the least. I feel like they're at a point, they're at kind of an inflection point where you win this game, you feel really good about yourselves for the Eagles. You lose this game, suddenly, the sky is falling, and the only saving grace is their division is kind of where the Saints have been over the last few years, where it's like, hey, we can maybe win this at 9-8. But all things considered, it's going to be a fun game, and I think both teams, right? The Saints are on a high right now. The Eagles are on a low. They might meet in the middle and play a really good game. One team might blow the other one out, and suddenly they flip sides, or the Saints just skyrocket. If the Saints go out and blow out the Eagles, which I don't think is going to happen, but if they do, I don't think even Nick Wright's going to be mad about it. But all right, again, this is Inside Black and Gold. I am Jeff Nowak. We're going to bring Steve Geller back in here, going through some X factors, some other stuff leading into this matchup on Sunday. Let's do it. Who dat? Rate, subscribe. Stick around. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. We are continuing to get you ready for Eagles 1-1, LOL, at Saints 2-0. And man, one thing that stood out to me from Eliot's interview is I asked him about, how do you feel about Vic Fangio's scheme? And it was like a 12-word answer. And he was like, he doesn't do anything interesting. It's boring and I don't like it, basically. And I think that's interesting because it's like you look at Zach Bond, and I think everyone's going to look at tackle numbers and tackle totals. And one thing that I think is misleading about tackles is if you're breaking up a pass, you don't get a tackle, right? If they're not completing the pass, you don't get a tackle. You get a tackle in coverage when they complete a pass in front of you and you clean it up. And I think, it's going to be interesting to see how that scheme operates, how Zach Bond operates in that scheme. But, man, I watched the Saints go after Zach Bond in coverage a lot when he was here, and that's what kept him off the field. And so if I'm the Saints, and most of the offensive staff that went against Zach Bond is not here anymore, but they got a lot of tape in practice of Zach Bond failing in coverage. And Derek Carr went against Zach Bond in coverage a good bit. And every time Zach got on the field, that's where the ball went. And so I don't know. Like, we'll see. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, we're again, and this is not really what this segment is about, but just we might come out of that game. Zach Bond has 20 tackles, but that doesn't mean he had a good game. That means they just attacked him relentlessly. So keep that in mind when you talk about, oh my God, Zach Bond's having such a great season. A massive tackle number doesn't always indicate like, wow, you're great. It means the ball's going to you a lot.
Yeah, talking to some of the other Eagles, beat writers, when you talk about those numbers, there's a lot of missed tackles in there too for Bond.
Yeah, and I just think we overreact to tackle numbers, generally speaking. And no, he did have a really great opener. That game in Brazil against the Packers, he was everywhere. He had a couple sacks. And that's what I'm more worried about with Bond than the tackling and just the general linebacker plays. Okay, did they get him off the edge pressure?
Yeah.
Because, again, Nick, we talk about, hey, he's gone against a lot of these players in practice too. So you have an idea. But This is going to be our X Factor segment. We're going to pick a few players, few positions, whatever, on both sides of the ball that we think could swing this matchup. We do it every week. Usually we're wrong. But Steve, I'll start with you. X Factor on offense. What is
I'm hopeful to see the breakout Chris Olave game. He's done, had a so-so start to the year in this offense. And I think it maybe could be his turn because I don't think this Eagles secondary is anything special. But the other thing is, though, the Eagles defense as a whole hasn't looked very good. And I'm even surprised when you go back and look at stats and just the scoring. And I don't know how they were lucky to come away with a victory week 1 against the Packers. And you saw how they just were able to vomit away a victory to the Atlanta Falcons at home in prime time. I think that the Saints are going to be able to attack. And for me, Chris Olave is a guy that maybe I'm hoping this will happen, but I think that he can definitely take advantage of this Eagles secondary. And I feel like it's his time to be that guy in this offense.
But yeah, there was one thing that Derek Carr said about Chris Olave this week that I found really interesting. And it was that he was asked, at what point last year did you feel like you and Chris were like really on the same page? And he had a very specific play. So I went and found it. So let's hear from Derek and then I'll play that play for you.
Was there a point where you really felt like you and Chris Olave were on the same page, whether it was last year or even just going into this season?
Yeah, I think there was a play. Now, forgive me because my mind is all on Philly right now. But I think it was against the Lions where he ran like we were in a play action. He ran like a sail. And the flat defender started getting some depth. And as I came out of fake, I was like, man, I really hope he sits this down, And we never talked about that. And as I'm throwing it, he started sitting it down. I drilled it in the window. He caught it and split it for like 20-something yards. And I was like, holy crap, like this could get really fun, And that was a moment right there where, we had been working and growing, and we're still working and growing. But that was a moment right there where him and I think we had a great moment, and that moment was a good one for us. Because when I saw him do that, I was like, that was different. The fact that he saw it the same way I did, that's hard for receivers to do. So I remember that moment, and then this whole year has been just phenomenal with him. I'm saying from the spring until now, we've just been working, growing. He knows he's our guy and all that kind of stuff, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think you have seen that over the final month plus of the season starting now. Like, if you're not in sync with your wide receiver and you're winning a game by the way the Saints have and you're not throwing him the ball, he's going to get frustrated. He's going to sulk. The approach from Derek and Chris, the connection between Derek and Chris, you've really seen it. So I agree with you. Like, I'd like to see that connection get going a little bit more because it's there. Like, you could see that, like, a lot of times we talk about, okay, why didn't that play work? Why did this play work? And we say the words, oh, they weren't on the same page. So much so to the point that it's like, what does it even mean anymore? Like, that's a great example of like, hey, we saw this the same way, so it worked. It wasn't necessarily the play design. We just both read the coverage and reacted to the coverage, and we made a big play downfield. So, that's the type of stuff that good offenses do that kind of gets overlooked. And I hate to say it, but I think the Saints are a good offense.
I mean, the first 2 weeks, it's hard to be critical of much with what's going on from the offensive line to the efficiency with the numbers. They really haven't had to throw to Chris, in the first 2 games, like leaned on him. That could very well be a case this week as well. We've talked about how bad that Eagles front is.
Yeah. Right. At a certain point, I'd like to see Chris go over 100 yards receiving, give his fantasy owners some love, but yeah. So I agree with you in the sense that I'd like to see Chris kind of start to get going, but I don't think this might not necessarily be his week, because to me on offense, and it's not so much about a player, my X factor on offense isn't about a player. It's about the run game in general. And when you look at what the Eagles have done, and one of the things I tweeted watching that game, because I watched both their games, but I watched the Falcons-Eagles game a lot more closely than I was able to watch Packers in week 1, because that was a Friday, and it was, Friday's not my football day, man. Friday's my do something else day. But either way, you look at the Eagles, and the number that stands out that you cannot look past, yards per carry allowed. 6.4. 6.4. That is the highest in the NFL. They have allowed through 2 weeks 315 rushing yards. You can't overlook that. And you're a Saints team.
What happened to all those Georgia players?
Well, that's the thing. Everyone on draft night, I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about how the Eagles just don't have those defensive players. And they were like, yeah, on draft night, I was getting texts from GMs like, how are you reacting to this? So like right now, we haven't even seen these players yet. And it's like everyone got so excited. Oh, the Eagles just take defensive players every time. And it's like, yeah, this is this idea that Howie Roseman is like doing laps around everybody. He's just doing the popular thing every time. At every turn, he's doing the popular move. Like, what's the most sentiment filled thing I can do right now? And we're gonna do it. Right? We'll draft the hot top guy on the board. We'll go and sign the top running back. We'll go and get the top wide receiver, right? Like, is he doing anything that's actually nuanced and clever? Or is he just doing the obvious thing? I'm going to go get A.J. Brown. I'm going to go get Saquon Barkley. I'm going to draft Jalen Carter. I'm going to draft whatever. To me, that has not worked out for them.
A.J. Brown's been a bit a hit. That was definitely a huge positive.
Oh, no, it was a good move, but it's not exactly oh, my God, I can't believe they thought to go get A.J. Brown, right? It's not like you're finding guys and developing them.
For me, Howie Roseman will always be remembered as the guy that passed on Jefferson and took Jalen Reagor.
Ever since that point, maybe that's what started all this. Is he, instead of doing the obvious thing and taking Justin Jefferson, the player that everyone watched and starring at LSU, he tried to get clever and went Jalen Reagor. And ever since that point, he's just done like, okay, what is this? What is the consensus thing I should do right now? I'm going to do that. And it works because everyone's on your side until it's like, man, we probably should have thought about this a little more. But I don't think they have the players on defense. I genuinely don't. I think that some of the players that you've got excited about do not fit, do not work. And you're kind of seeing that kind of manifest, particularly in the run game. And so if I'm the Saints, I'm like, hey, how have we won the first 2 weeks? We've run the ball. We have beaten up on the opposing front, and we have averaged 5.56 yards a carry. And we've set up the play action and we've hit it. And I don't see any reason to deviate from that this week. My tweet watching that game was the Saints should be able to run the ball on this defensive front.
I just feel like obviously Philly's going to focus on the run, stopping the run a lot more this week. You don't do it every week, but
that doesn't mean you can do it.
No, exactly. But that to me, I think will open up things though immensely downfield. And I like I mentioned with Chris Olave, I expect Derek Carr to come out firing too and have a great game. His numbers have been great with the touchdowns. Obviously, yardage hasn't been there. I think he could get up into the 250, 300 range this week.
Yeah, and I mean, like, to me, it's like what I need to see this week is, sure, they might dedicate themselves. They might devote all these extra resources to the run game. You still have to run the ball.
Oh, yeah.
But what that's going to allow is for you to attack downfield and I do not think that their secondary is anything to speak of generally. Like, you just can't get into a situation where they are you can't outthink yourself, where you see this team struggling against the run and then they kind of bulk up against the run and you're like, actually, we're going to throw. Whereas and then you're already overthinking your way out of attacking their weakness, right? Like, I want to attack them where they are not good. And then if they enforce them to devote as much as possible to stopping that and then go attack them. And that's what I think the Saints offense has done remarkably well. The other thing is, like, are we overreacting to Clint's success at this point because no one has a book on him? And maybe as people get a little bit more familiar with what he's going to do and what he likes to do, then you have an idea. It's like watching a pitcher go out and have a lot of success in his first couple starts, and then teams start to get tape on him and be like, oh, this is what he likes to do, throw here. This is what he likes to do here. You got to have a fastball that works. Doesn't have to be 100-mile-an-hour fastball, but it does have to be placed, right? You got to be able to put it where you want. And then you got to have a changeup. You can succeed with 2 pitches, but they have to be good pitches, and you have to understand when to use them.
We got a lot of baseball analogies.
Yeah, baseball works for play calling.
And you got to hit the strike zone.
Yeah, only pitching though. It can't. Yeah, right. And you got to execute, right? Like you can throw a perfect pitch, but if it's 3 feet outside the zone, you can decide a fastball top left corner of the strike zone, perfect pitch right now. if you don't throw it there, it doesn't matter, right? So you got to execute, and that's what the Saints have done the first 2 weeks. Is they've called the right plays, the right pitches, and they've executed at a high level. And so we'll see if Klint has to start throwing wrinkles in on his own. Like the self-scouting at this point is going to be interesting to see how he kind of reacts to his own tendencies. But either way, like I don't think at this point in the season you're not overthinking it. You're going in there and you're throwing your fastball and saying, okay, can you hit it?
Right.
And then if they can, then okay, we're gonna adjust. But until they prove they can hit that fastball, I'm still throwing fastballs.
Hit them hard.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe throw behind them once or twice just to get in their head.
Well, another big deal, obviously, going into this game is how are the Saints going to stop not so much I'm worried about Saquon, but it is the Jalen Hurts factor in this game. Because
yeah, so let's go.
We've seen them struggling so much. And can Willie Gay be that dude?
All right. Well, you're jumping the gun here. Well, but let's do it. Let's shift to defense. Let's talk about X factors on defense. And I think we're going to have the same thing here. And yeah, it's Jalen Hurts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Going into this season now, looks a lot healthier or back to being that mobile guy at the start of this year, at least, because I felt like for most of last season, we didn't see Jalen Hurts running as much as he did the first 2 weeks of this year already.
We did early in the year, and that's when the Eagles were having success. And then over the final 8-9 games, he was hurt. I think they were being conservative with how they used him, and you lost games, and I think that's when you watch this Eagles offense, when they're having success, it's not that they're constantly running Jalen Hurts, but it's that the threat is there all the time.
Maybe it's his back, too much tush push.
Maybe he tweaked something. But, the interesting thing, so Joe Woods, Saints defensive coordinator, he hasn't faced the Eagles since he's been here. Saints didn't face the Eagles last year. But that's been the big question is, can this Saints defense stop mobile quarterbacks? Can they keep them contained? And we haven't really had to see that over the first 2 weeks. Dak obviously is athletic. He can run. But ever since that ankle injury, when he kind of shattered his ankle against the Giants, it hasn't been a huge part of offense, the Dallas's offensive game plan. You're not really calling designed runs for him. I think that's the biggest difference. Is this a guy that you're going to call a designed run for, or is this a guy who's athletic enough to extend plays and maybe run if you give him an opening? And that's the Cowboys are that second part. Dak and the Cowboys are that second part. Jalen is the first real example of, okay, you're going to actually see designed runs for this guy, and can you handle it? And this is Joe Woods kind of talking about that today.
Yeah, I mean, I was in a division with Lamar, so I definitely understand it. But you have to stop the run game. And what happens when you play teams where the quarterback runs the ball, they're playing with 11. So now you have to play with 11. So that guy sitting in the post, you can't sit in the post. So I think that's what's dynamic about teams that run the ball with the quarterback. So you have to commit yourself to stopping the run first and foremost based on the situation and go from there. If you don't stop the run, they're going to control the time of possession. They're going to move the ball, and it's going to be tough to beat.
Have you tried radically different things? I mean, did you try something in year one against Lamar and then the next year the exact opposite, or?
Probably, if you check the record, yes. Some of the stuff didn't work, but eventually you figure out what's the right game plan or what gives you the best opportunity to win. And I feel like we have a good game plan. We have some different change-ups. It's not going to be perfect, but you have to commit yourself to stopping the run game.
And then if you're committed to stopping the run, even more committed to stopping the run, how come it seems like running backs have so much success in those offenses? Like you'd think it'd be even harder to run because people are quote-unquote stacking the box or whatever.
Well, that's part of it because it's responsibility football. Is the quarterback keeping it or is he handing it to the running back? So everybody has to be assignment sound. And when guys don't execute their job, that's when those big plays happen, whether it's the quarterback or the running back.
Some of that planning, I don't want to say go out the window, but some of these are scrambles where the play breaks down and they're just making plays. How do you prepare for that?
Yeah, you just have to be aware of it. We know he's a mobile quarterback. He definitely extends plays, and I tell my guys, you got to cover him twice. You got to cover the initial route, and you got to anticipate that there's going to be times where he's going to scramble to keep the play alive, and you got to cover him twice. So that's what type of game it's going to be.
Yeah, and so, it's funny. He's talking about they play with 11 when the quarterback runs the ball. He's not talking about 11 personnel, and so that might be confusing for some people. So 11 personnel would be, one running back, one tight end, 3 wide receivers. When he's saying play with 11, he means that you're playing 11-on-11 football in that you run the ball in a traditional offense. You have a running back with the ball, then you have 9 potential blockers. When you run the quarterback, you have a quarterback running the ball and 10 blockers. So you're playing with 11. And so I think that's the type of matchup that, hey, this is why you brought in Willie Gay. Like you mentioned, it's a scenario that, hey, we're going to be able to play. They're going to want to play a little bit heavier personnel because they don't have AJ Brown. They're going to have Devontae Smith out there. They might have like a Britton Covey, somebody else. And then it's going to be probably 2 tight ends and more two running backs. And this might be the first time we see a really heavy Willie Gay game plan. So I agree with you.
Because his snaps really haven't been there, right? I mean, I don't have him in front of me, but I feel like he really hasn't been a big part of this defense early on.
Here's the thing. When you're the Sam linebacker, you're the third linebacker, it's a matchup game, right? And you're only going to get on the field when they're showing heavy personnel. So no, you haven't seen a ton of Willie Gay. Now, I think when he's been on the field, he's been solid. But yeah, week 1, you got 21 snaps on defense. Week 2, you got 26 snaps on defense. And it's tough because you're not seeing against the Cowboys. You're not seeing a lot of heavy personnel, especially with Jake Ferguson out, right? Yeah, they're top tight end, so you're probably going to go more toward the wide receivers. Against the Panthers, you're going to see a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. Against the Eagles, probably not. You're probably going to see more heavy personnel. So maybe this is the game that you do that, and you see a lot less Alontae Taylor. And that's kind of the give and take of these systems. But one way or another, I need someone that can go out there and tackle the quarterback. Because that's been the frustrating thing. And what seems positive in this matchup is less that, hey, can you stop Jalen Hurts? I think they're still going to struggle to stop Jalen Hurts because they're a 4-3 defense and he's going to run and he's going to be frustrating. But can you stop him enough that your offense can outscore them? And in the past, it's felt like the answer was no, because you felt like you were capped at like 25 points, right? Now it feels like you have the offensive firepower to go out there and match them score for score. And your defense will be able to force enough turnovers, get enough stops that you can take advantage of it. And that's the difference to me. And so can you be more effective? Not great, not perfect at stopping a mobile quarterback. Can you be more effective and maybe take 1 or 2 scores off the board that you've seen in the past?
Yeah, to me, not having, we'll go back with, AJ Brown not being around is huge.
Oh, yeah, it changes everything. It changes everything for them.
Devonta's a great receiver, but he's no AJ Brown.
You can double him. You can be physical with him. Right. Now, he might get his over the top, but, yeah, it's going to be another, I want to say Barry Melrose. He looks like Barry Melrose, but it's just going to be another week where Mel Kiper's like, man, ban 2 high defenses. We're ruining the NFL. And it's like, no, run the damn ball. Get under center. Run the ball.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that was a take that, it seemed to permeate the NFL landscape that yesterday, I guess it was.
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. It's like, instead of actually asking offenses to adjust, it's like, isn't defense already impossible to play? Don't we say that now? And so there's this one strategy that seems to work. And the answer is not, okay, let's see if the offense can figure this out. It's ban it. Come on. What is he wants safeties to have to start the snap at closer. That's really what he's saying. He's saying, I want a rule that forces safeties to play closer to the line of scrimmage. So he wants kind of a cap on, okay, the line of scrimmage is at the 40. So you can't line up more than 20 yards or whatever beyond the line of scrimmage. So you would have to have the safeties maxed out at your 40. And you would call it an illegal formation on the defense. But come on.
Seemed like, did we have that slow of a news day? It's like, well, somebody throw out some crazy shit out there.
Yeah, it's so dumb. It's so dumb.
But back with Jalen Hurts, obviously, he looks like that dude, I guess you said, he kind of got nicked up in the middle of the year, and his rushing numbers really tailed off. But I've been really surprised on seeing Philly the first 2 weeks, leaning on him a lot, mentioning no Brown in the mix. Obviously, the addition of Saquon has been a big factor for them, but man, oh man, what a huge drop for him. And I know we've been used to seeing that from Saquon. I've seen a bunch of things, and even my buddies have sent me, being, an Eagles faithful, to like, you can take Saquon on to New York, but you can't take the New York out of Saquon. I'm like, haha, great.
Yeah, I think what I tweeted was like the Vince Carter meme where it's like, I got one more in me. Like he saw the Giants lose in such a bizarre way that he was like, just got nostalgic for it. But no, Saquon, he's a beast, and he's going to get his. We remember that game where he came in with the Giants and Daniel Jones, and like they erased that fourth quarter deficit, and it was like, man, like we can't stop this guy. So he's going to get out.
That's a fourth quarter I cannot fathom. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, and he's going to get out as a pass catcher. He's going to, and DA talked about this. It's like you could bottle him up all game. And they did last year against the Giants, to their credit, the Saints. You can bottle him up all game, but you give him one seam, gone. Like he is, you talk about home run threats at the running back position, and talk to Eliot about this. Like he's there aren't that many true home run threats in the NFL, because to be a home run threat, you have to be on the field a lot, right? Like if you have really fast running backs, but they're a liability in protection, or they don't get on the field for situations that you're going to even have them on a first down where they might go against a heavy look that you can get past, and suddenly there's only one guy in the secondary that you can run away from. Most home run threats at the running back position are just like, okay, they're solid, but they're not going to get on the field as much as a guy like Saquon is. Like Saquon, you could bottle him up all game, and then he can go for a 90-yard touchdown run. Like where'd he go? And so that's going to be one. But all right, let's wrap this episode up. Again, I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. Thanks again to Eliot Shorr-Parks for coming on. Hopefully see him at the Dome this weekend. He'll be there. He's been covering the Eagles for 13 years now. A 3-0 start, man, that'd be a whole thing.
Cry, Eagles, cry.
Cry, Eagles, cry. Hopefully Bobby's there to antagonize some Eagles fans again. I know
definitely will be for sure, right?
All right, but who dat? Go Saints. Thanks for listening, y'all. Make sure to rate, subscribe, whatever you do it again. And we'll be back at you on Monday with our post game reactions.
Let's go black and gold.
Woo!